Anytime you baptize somebody in running water, and you may want to make notes here. Anytime you baptize them in running water, keep the top of the candidate's head upstream. That is terribly important. I cannot emphasize this enough. See, if I put your head upstream, that means the water will run over your nose and head on to the Gulf or something. If I turn you the other way, the creek is going to run up your nose. That's when we tend to lose them. That's what Gordon did to me, got me backwards, see, and I thought I was gone. I came fighting out of there, and no wonder they're Methodists, you know. I thought, you know, that made good sense. But really, you get back, let's say a little passing hunk of moss floating down the stream. And it socks it right in there in your nose, see, and you're not sure it's moss. And I think you'd want to know if it's moss. My feeling is you have every right to know. It's your nose. Tell you one thing, you will seek to find out if it is moss. In fact, that's where we get Presbyterians from. I don't know if you know that. Presbyterians are people that got dropped when they got moss up their nose. That's what the word Presbyterian means in the original Greek. Old moss in the nose. That's a little bit weird. But when we first started bringing baptisms indoors, you didn't have a baptistry up high on the wall behind the choir where God meant for it to be. Baptistries were cut in the floor of the pulpit area, generally. And it might be right under the pulpit, it might be to one side or right behind it, it might be off over to the edge, but on that platform area somewhere there was a hole cut out about 8 feet wide, about 4 feet deep, and about 5 feet up second rib on the preacher. Baptistries would be covered over with about a 2x6 lid, heavy 2x6 put together lid that would cover that hole. Then it would have a carpet over it if you were in a more fortunate congregation. Now we've got a wire that runs right behind the baptistry, parallel to the congregation. Then there's a little T-intersection right over the baptistry that runs to the back wall. So you got a sheet that comes forward, you got a sheet that comes out from the right, and a sheet from the left. And when those are pulled, there's a place on the right and on the left for the men and the ladies to dress for the ordinance of a baptism. Now while they're pulling the sheets, the song leader is up leading us. And all the water music in the hymn book. Showers of blessing, Jordan's stormy banks are standing. Shall we get that river? And they, you know, anything with water in it, we sing at this point. Methodists at this time usually sing at higher ground. And the song leader's out there just letting us have it. Now the preacher clears his throat behind the sheet. That says, I got my socks and my tie off, I got my khakis on, I'm ready. Song leader will stop at the end of the next verse and have everybody just sit down and be quiet. They do. And one of the young guys with his belt on his name on his belt gets up and goes over and pulls a handle on the big square D electrical box in the rear. Cuts off all the power except to the one lone yellow light bulb, B-U-B, light bulb. That's what we have in Texas, light bulbs. Well, this yellow light bulb is swinging left and right because one of the guys hauling the pulpit bumped it, and there it is, swinging. You're sitting still, but the church feels like it's moving, left to right. Preacher comes down these little wooden steps into the water, leads us in a fervent prayer for these who've come to follow their Lord in the ordinance of baptism. Then he brings in Brother Hawkins. Brother Hawkins is going to be the first one to baptize tonight, and he comes into the water, turns and faces the preacher's right. Preacher puts his hand on his back, arm up in there, in the name of the Father, and then puts him under, brings him up, splash, like, and a lot of splashing there. Kids all stand up in those old church pews, you know, trying to watch. And any parent worth his salt will hold on to kids' belt loop during baptism, you know, because they can get loose from you and just can kill the spirit of the moment. So Hawkins goes splashing up the steps, slosh, splash, slosh, step, and he gets louder as he climbs higher because the water's falling further. Splash, slosh, splash, slosh as he comes up. Goes through the sheet, splash, slosh, slosh, kind of muffles it. But you can still hear through the sheet, splash, slosh, splash, slosh. A few minutes later, squawk, that's his shirt hitting the floor. You hear everything through the sheet. Then he turns to Miss Middleton on his left, who's going to come out of the other side of the sheet. This is a Methodist lady who's finally seen the light. And looks like she's been staring at the bug. Just bug-eyed. She wants to, just scared to death. And she kind of balks with her head out the sheet like somebody at one of those little carnival booths that you throw things at. Just didn't want to come through at all. So he reaches over to help her, and she just clonks him in the wrist bone with her fingernails and starts saying through her clenched teeth, I just can't do it, I just can't do it. Well, he tries to encourage her, says, trust me, trust me, trust me, through his teeth. And kind of leans her on out a little to her, and she comes right on down the steps, scared to death. Well, she turns and faces the wall on the right. Puts his hand on her, starts to put her under, and she keeps on, I can't do it. And he just, trust me, trust me. Gets his in the name of the Father, and starts to put her under, and it was like bending a stump. She was not going back, Well, he tried again, and she would not move. Had her legs apart, front to back, wasn't going. Well, he was tempted to reach out with his left foot and just boom, kick them out from under her and take her on under for her own good. But he decided this should be her own free choice. So what he did was he just caught her by the back of the head and the nose and just power played her right in the water. And walked her back like you're laying an ironing board down. Well, the woman was just trying to scream, but it had her mouth covered. And she couldn't, boy. And just as she was going under the water, she couldn't yell. Her eyes are about 2 inches around on each side. She wants to scream. She can't get it out. And as he's putting her under the water, she reached out and grabbed this sheet going across behind the baby. And just twang, pulled it right down. It collapsed all over, right into baby. All you could hear was screws flying and wires twanging as it came down. Brother Hawkins was over here drying off. And he heard everybody laughing, and he turned around to see what was wrong. There was nothing to do but right back in the water. Feet first, just... He personally baptized 4 rows. Miss Middleton walked out on the water. And went back to become a fine Methodist missionary. There's another part of the old country church that I enjoyed so much that we don't really get to celebrate quite as much anymore is the old homemade church pews now. Here in the studio tonight we've got some makeshift benches, as my dear friend Clark Dawson would call them, some benches. These are assembled and stacked up for us. But the old country church pew was something all its own. These were built by people that specialized in chicken coops. It really doesn't do much good to specialize in homemade church pews because they're not going to build many in your vicinity in your lifetime. So you don't need a lot. Pews were anywhere from 12 to 14 feet long. Usually they had a solid end piece and a solid center piece. Then there was a section cut into that for the seat bottom and a section cut up the back for the back support. And the seat and the back were made out of very flexible, occasional 1x2s. And between the 1x2s, you're on your own. I mean, you sat down and got up easy on those things. You snag your nits or something. It's kind of weird. Now, anytime you're sitting on those old homemade church pews, you really had to kind of keep your eye open at all times, because let's say you might be sitting across the center divider of that old homemade church pew from the church heavy lady, Miss Hawkins. She's a dear woman. She